Hi there. In this video we'll be covering, should I write a book in first or third person? Unlocking the right point of view can make or break your story, and sorting it out before the writing process can save you lots of time. By the end of this video you will learn the importance of perspective, the differences between first and third person writing, and how to approach point of view as you begin writing your book. And stay tuned until the end of the video for a free opportunity. Let's dive in. Perspective is such an important element in storytelling. Perspective is the difference between seeing something broadly and seeing something from one person's view. Perspective can jump and change throughout a book. It can enliven parts of the book that might not be as powerful, or it can sink a project because it's not being told from the right perspective. You know, vantage point's such an important thing in storytelling, and you really need to understand the best vantage point from which to tell the story. First person's popular, and first person's all about point of view from the person who's sharing it. It's within their viewpoint. It's within their focus. Everything that you're seeing is from their eyes. You're not seeing anything outside of that. You're seeing everything within their purview, everything that they understand, everything that they know. First person point of view can be really powerful when looking at inner monologue, when looking at inner thought, when sharing the feelings and ideas that somebody has that no one else would know. It can be really great to see that first person perspective when someone's going through something difficult, when someone's overcoming obstacles, when they're facing a crisis, anything. It's really great to be able to understand things from their perspective. Third person perspective, on the other hand, requires a broader pulled back approach. You know, you're telling the story as it's happening. You're telling what's happening from multiple perspectives on a broader perspective and not specifically from one person. This can be really powerful if you don't have that inner monologue, if there's not that person guiding the story forward. Third person's more pulled back. It's more focused on story authority. It's really about stepping back and being able to see the scene for what's happening, to tell it broadly, to detail what's happening to other people. First person's more focused on one person's perspectives, and third person's pulled back and telling things more broadly. But it requires a level of authenticity and a real level of understanding. First person's all about talking directly to the reader instead of explaining things to them and sharing things with them. And as you begin your book project, you really need to think in terms of the power that perspective can bring to a project. I think back to somebody I've worked with named Jason, and his story involves himself and his father. His father did a lot of writing and had this book that he was working on, and he'd since passed away. And now Jason's working on the book in his place and trying to carry it forward to completion. But it's interesting because Jason's father is telling things from a first person's perspective, and Jason's telling things more from a third person perspective with some first person mixed in. So it kind of jumps around a bit in terms of perspective. It's required so much thought and planning in terms of the scope of the story and what's best for the chapter at hand. There's been some aspects of the story that Jason is retelling without having witnessed with his own eyes, whereas his father's story is all about first person perspective and things that he lived. So it's been interesting to see the balance of those two things. I think back to another project I worked on too, involving genealogy and family history. There were all of these different characters involved across generations, and the person I was working with, we grappled with it for a long time about how to approach these other sections. Do we write these other sections in first person and tell that other person's perspectives? Or do we write it in third person and pull back and just tell the story as though, you know, John did this, John did that, instead of I did this, I did that, and shift the narrative every single time. And we ended up keeping it third person for all of those other stories that didn't involve this person. And then his stories were I did this, I did that. And it was really powerful to see the way it worked. I think if we had tried to wedge in and shoehorn in first person into all the book, it would have fallen flat. But I think it really worked out having this third person perspective and then first person for the focus that this person had. And it really gelled. It really made sense. There are other types of perspectives like second person, but they're not really popularly used and they're not as prevalent especially in nonfiction books. Nonfiction books are really focused on first person or third person. If you are sharing a story of your own experiences, it makes sense to make it first person because you're going to have such richer storytelling. Yeah, I dealt with that actually with the project I was working on, and it was involving a sports team, and the coach was the centerpiece of the book and the storyteller of the book. We grappled with it back and forth. You know, he was really trying to pull himself out of the story, and he wanted to make it a broader third-person story. And I convinced him otherwise. I thought it was a lot stronger with him as the centerpiece telling his perspectives and his viewpoints. By losing first person, you lose those viewpoints, and then you're writing secondhand about it. It doesn't feel the same. You know, to say Ron saw this happen is not the same as I saw this happen. You know, you want that first person perspective whenever you can get it. You know, if you're writing a thought leadership book and you want this book to help your brand and your business and your company, you want to talk about your experiences firsthand. You don't want to write it as though someone else is writing the story. You want to write it from your own perspective. I would say focus on first person perspective as much as you can. Use that point of view to your advantage. If you're writing a book about other things, about other people, about things that you weren't witness to, it's okay to use third person. And third person can be very powerful. There's that step away from the story, and now you're telling it from a different perspective. So it's really crucial as you begin to write your book to figure out what the best point of view is. Keep an open mind, because you could be writing the book and want to explore a different point of view or jump around with points of view and try new things. And, you know, keeping it loose and fresh is a great way to approach the book writing process. But point of view is going to help carry your story forward in the strongest way possible. And you definitely want to give it attention. You want to give it your best effort, and you want to make sure it makes sense. All right, now that you learned all about perspective and book writing, I wanted to offer a free opportunity for you, a free course. It's called Good Book Blueprint. Just head to goodbookblueprint.com. I recorded the course with a dear friend and collaborator of mine, Nate Woodbury, and we talk all about the writing process. And I think if you have questions about point of view, you're probably going to have questions about other steps in the process. And, you know, watching the videos we recorded can really help give you peace of mind and clarity as you continue forward with the book process. Remember, good ghostwriting makes great books. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.